everyone on the board is familiar with the property. Briefly, just to outline, it's the Army Depot housing, 325 Duanesburg Road. To the west of the property is the industrial park, industrial uses, warehouse uses. To the north, across Duanesburg Road, is residential uses. Although it's a commercial zone, there are actual residential uses going along Duanesburg Road. To the east, there is a commercial use, which is, I believe, is a karate center, which is also on an industrial property, but the actual use is a commercial use. And to the south, there is the ball fields, and then within the industrial park area, in the industrial zone, there is a large office complex. Also, in the immediate vicinity to the south, there are the two properties that I believe would form a commandant's residences for the depot that were recently changed by the town of Rotterdam within the last few years from an industrial use to a residentially zoned use. It went from industrial to residential, which is what we're also seeking. And again, that's in the immediate vicinity of our client's property. Brief history. I won't go through everything. I believe all the board members received my firm's letter dated March 19th. I would ask that that be added into the record of this public hearing so I don't have to go through each and every detail again. I will highlight some details of that letter that I believe are important for the board as well as for the public because they may not be aware of it. First, this property was government property which was placed up for auction. The auction occurred in early of 2008. Our clients obtained the property. They were the highest bidder. In July of, I believe it was July of 2008, they had an inspection of the property for building code matters conducted by two town building inspectors. There's a lot of misinformation out there about building code violations. What people don't realize is that this property was inspected by not just one but two town building inspectors. There was one issue related to certifications of alarms, which was promptly rectified, and proof of that remedy was provided to the town of Rotterdam. Subsequent to that, our clients received a letter from the town of Rotterdam stating that they were in violation of the town code and they were not permitted to use the property for residential purposes that they had begun using it for. Important to note, building code inspection took place before they rented units. They had the building code inspection. They fixed the one problem they were told to fix. They began renting units. They were in the business of operating an apartment complex. It was subsequent to the renting of the units that they received a letter saying they weren't allowed to utilize the property as an apartment complex and that they were not allowed to use it for residential purposes, and they were ordered to, by the town of Rotterdam, to cease immediately. Brings up a number of questions. The first is, why would the building inspectors go inspect the property in July? Why didn't they just tell my client when he called about it or inquired about it? Why didn't they just tell him, you're in violation, you're not a permitted use? Why would they have to inspect it if it wasn't a permitted use to begin with? Second of all, what transpired in that time frame from when they were there and said everything's fine except this one thing you need to fix, to a letter a few weeks later saying you can't be there, you can't use it the way you're using it, you have to get out and cease operation? What changed? We don't know. We have no idea. Why would you waste the time to conduct an inspection? Why didn't they just tell them you're not a permitted use back in the first instance? To step back in the history a little bit, my clients performed their due diligence during the auction process. It was a U.S. government auction. However, my clients investigated with the town whether or not commercial apartments were a permitted use on that particular property. My clients, as well as people independent of my clients, other people in this room, other than Sync Realty Group this evening, they were informed when they inquired by town staff that it was a permitted use. Commercial apartments were a permitted use. That's what town personnel were telling people during the auction process. I can provide independent verification of that, irrespective of what it was said to my clients. Other people will testify to that. So the town's telling people it's a permitted use. They come for the inspection. They say, fix one thing and you're fine. They start renting apartments. All of a sudden, you can't be there. Get out. Again, what changed? That's the important component of the history of this project, in my opinion. Now, since then, has there been litigation? Yes. Granted, there has been litigation. There's an appeal pending. In the meantime, the amount of misinformation, outright lies, prejudice that has been put out in this community, briefly alluded to by Jennifer and Sim, has been unbelievable. What I'd like to do tonight is correct some of just a little bit of the misinformation I've heard, and there may even be more. Again, the school district letter that came out at the Planning Commission, I'm not even going to comment on it. It speaks for itself. Those of you that haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. I think that's been sufficiently addressed by Mr. Goldman and Ms. Murphy. The online petition that vote against the Section 8 housing, go look at the online petition that's circulating online. Which, by the way, I'm told the signatures on there are a who's who of the Mohonasen School District, the administration, actual school board members, employees, staff, teachers, and coaches. Those are the names, I'm told. I'm not too familiar with the staffing of the district. Those are the names that are on that online petition, and I would urge you to review that petition. And what does it say? Section 8 housing. Well, it's not Section 8 housing. And people can't have it both ways. People can't go around saying, this place has massive building code violations and it's Section 8 housing. Well, anybody that knows anything about the Section 8 program knows they don't put Section 8 clients in anything that has building code violations. If there's building code violations, Section 8 doesn't go there. So what is it? Is it Section 8? Then it must be building code. Does it have building code violations? Then it's not Section 8 housing. Again, the misinformation that's out there. Are there Section 8 recipients in this project? Yes, there is currently one unit rented to Section 8, which, again, proves no building code violations. You have a building code inspection, and Section 8 recipients are allowed to go there after being reviewed by the agency. So where are the building code violations? People have made a big issue out of the number of police calls. Well, yes, there are police calls. But I think any law enforcement professional will tell you that when you put a larger group of people on a single property, it is, after all, multifamily housing. There are dozens and dozens of people there. You are going to generate more police calls than a single-family residence. It goes without saying. It's a strange way of saying the law of supply and demand. If you have more people, there are going to be more police calls. The log sheet that people hold up and say, look at all these police calls. They hold it up and it looks really thick, but when you look at it, of the 254 calls, I believe, in a 2-year period, over half of them were property checks. Property checks, my understanding of it is, I'm not a policeman, are uninitiated drive-throughs by the police department, just like they would go through any other neighborhood, and what they do is they call in on the radio just to announce where they are and that they checked the property and that everything was fine. That's the majority of the thing people wave around about police calls. The number of over 100 police calls. Again, police calls. Any traffic stop that takes place on Route 7 in front of that property goes down as a police call of 325 Waynesburg Road. My client has no control over who gets pulled over in front of his property. So to say that there's this massive amount of police calls is a misnomer because it's not representative of the actual calls there. And anytime you have a group of people in one area on one property, you're going to have more calls. Fire department. Fire department calls. I believe there were 5 calls in 2009 to the fire department, which I believe is South Schenectady District 6. One of them involved, 2 of them actually involved open burning. They warned them that they can't burn outside. It kept burning. They went back and said, you got to put it out. They put it out. There was an actual fire. First one to admit it. There's an actual fire at the property. So there's 3. I'm not quite sure what the other ones were. I think one was a transformer fire. Clearly, my client has no control over a transformer fire. But the point is, 245 calls, I believe, for District 6 in 2009. 5 of them were to my client's property. I would also note, in 2009, this building had 3 calls. So there are 3 calls in this building, and there are a lot less people in this building than there are in my client's apartment complex. I would also point out that 1300 North Westcott Road, which I suspect is the industrial park or a portion of the industrial park, had 30 fire calls. But I don't hear anybody in the community saying we got to shut down the industrial park because there were 30 fire department calls, and that's just, they're too busy. I don't know what the